we're going to have several candidates speaking for the U.S. Senate. They're running for the Republican primary, which is going to be in June. We're supposed to have 3 of them here. Jonathan's here. Is Gwendolyn here? No? And I know Kimberly's here because I already talked to her. Right, so we're going to give those candidates 10 minutes to tell us why they are running, who they are, what they stand for. Please write down your questions on the cards, and if they answer your question while they're talking, please cross those out so you don't ask it again. And after they speak, then we will ask them questions. So if you don't have a pen or a card on your table to write your questions, please do it now. Get it from Teresa. There's a 50-50 going around. It's 1 for $1, 6 for $5. That's the 50-50. And Carol Hickman is the one selling them. There are several, all the candidates need signatures, and we have several here for the, so we have Keegan's, Congressman Keegan's signatures. Who's got that?
I got that.
There.
I got it.
You got that, okay. Oh, you got it too? Well, I think I did tell you guys we had somebody doing Jen, but okay. And we have somebody doing for Michael Bellucci, right? He's running for re-election city council, right? He's got him over there, raise your hand, right? That's District 3, so you have to be in that district to sign it, right? And then we have somebody running for the 7th district. She's got one for Noah, and this lady right here is running, and she's got hers right there. Cindy, whose do you
I
have?
have Noah's as well.
You have Noah's? You have Jen's. We don't need, John's already filed his. You have?
I'm Cal for United States Senate.
And you have, that's for Senate. Anybody in Virginia can sign that one. Okay, so we have 7th district, 3rd district, Congress, Jen Higgins is what district?
Second.
02, I think that's most of Virginia Beach, I mean, right, all of Virginia Beach.
This
Part
particular
of Chesapeake as
sheet,
well.
this particular sheet is for Virginia Beach residents only.
You only have Virginia Beach residents?
Right, exactly.
We have anybody here from Chesapeake that needs to sign it? Only Vic, she's probably already signed it. Okay, so let me introduce now the first one, and we'll just go in alphabetical order, and that would be Jonathan Walker Emord. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but he's a constitutional lawyer, and he's also an author, and I'm sure he'll tell you all about it. All right, Jonathan, 10 minutes.
All right, thank you. Let me know when you have like 2 minutes.
I will.
Okay. All right, well, it's a great privilege to be here with Patriots, and I appreciate the chance to talk to you tonight. I am a constitutional lawyer, have been for the last 38 years. I came to Washington in the Reagan administration.
Can you speak into the mic that
Sure.
way? So people
Is
can
that
hear
better?
you?
Yeah.
Yes, you have to actually do it that way.
So I feel like I ought to sing. I'll let Chris Parkinson do that. But I came to Washington in the Reagan administration, and I was 23 years old, finished law school, started a PhD program in constitutional history when I got a call from the Reagan people. They said, how'd you like to work for the Federal Communications Commission? And I said, well, I don't think that the FCC should exist, so why should I go to work for it? And they said that's their thinking too, and that they actually wanted to deregulate radio and television and hopefully reach a point where they could have a property rights system instead of the government controlling the airwaves. That latter part never happened, but we did see deregulation of radio and television, which brought us Rush Limbaugh. All right, so after I left the FCC, I went to work as a private litigator against the government. And so for the last 38 years, I've sued the government, and I hold the record for defeating the Food and Drug Administration in federal court, which is 10 times on constitutional grounds, 8 times on constitutional grounds. More times still before the Supreme Court in the Western States Medical Center case as one of the attorneys for Western States Medical Center against the FDA and elsewhere. Now, what I want to say about our country is this. The Constitution hangs by a thread. We are in a situation, I think, that everyone here fully appreciates. And that is that if we don't change fundamentally the direction of our nation within the next few years, if not sooner, we will see ourselves effectively become servants of a totalitarian government. We have individuals in government who, with impunity, violate the Constitution every day. They don't care about the Constitution. I realized this was a problem. There are some books back here that I've written. One is called The Rise of Tyranny. The other one is a little bit of fun for you, how Biden stole Christmas, Hanukkah, and Kwanzaa too, in verse. But these books, the first book is one of several books that I've written on government law and government good. I wrote it in 2008, and I predicted where we are today. And how could that be possible? Well, I'll tell you why. Even then, you could see within the administrative state the direction that this country was going in, because, believe it or not, 3/4 of all federal laws are not the product of those we elect. It's the product of the unelected heads of over 250 agencies, bureaus, and departments. And they rule in a dictatorial manner, and that is what we confront whenever we are have the unfortunate position of becoming a defendant to a government action. It's going to be an agency action against you. And that agency will deny you all of your constitutional rights under the Constitution that would protect you in a federal court of law. And that institution has combined legislative, executive, and judicial power. The party that is the commissioner, that writes the rules, is also the party that enforces the rules against you, and ultimately judges whether you violated the rules. In a system like that, there is no justice. What we have seen over the last 100 years is an evolution of our country from a constitutional republic into a bureaucratic oligarchy. And this oligarchy loves and lusts after power, and the only way to save our country is to break that, is to eliminate the administrative state. Let's talk quickly about solutions to problems, because I don't like a candidate who runs for office and talks about problems that we all agree exist, but provides no solutions. First, let's take the schools, the education. What's going on with the Department of Education, which should be abolished? The Department of Education in this administration is reinterpreting Title IX, and it has a pending rule that will cause every single bathroom, locker room, and sports team to be open to any male who declares himself female. Instantaneously, we will have a massive increase in sexual assaults and rapes, and we will also see the total destruction of the scholarship program for women's sports and the opportunity for women to excel in sports. This we must eliminate by ensuring that we amend Title IX to prevent this type of reinterpretation of the law, and I would say it would be not necessary but for the fact that we have federal courts that are going along with this. Then we have this whole transgender movement in the schools. And this has been going on for some time. Now we have the situation where individuals who declare their biological gender, their gender to be different from their biological sex, are celebrated in the schools. And so you have this malign influence on kids that is part of really an effort to destroy their sense of identity. Because when you destroy a sense of identity, you can totally manipulate children. And that's where CRT comes in, and the whole Marxist indoctrination of kids. But on this point about the transitioning, if elected to the United States Senate, not only will I take care of the Title IX problem, but I will also ensure that a law is passed that will make it a federal felony for anyone to aid or cause the transitioning of anyone under the age of 18, because it is clearly an act of child abuse. Now, we have this border problem, and believe me, it's horrendous. So 5 weeks ago, I was at the border, and I went with the CBP chief, and I went through many instances, many areas where there are severe problems. One area I can talk about in the short time we have is the human processing centers. We don't have any border protection for this country. They have taken the Border Patrol and they've reassigned almost all of them to the human processing centers. And this is what it is. The human processing centers take anyone who seeks asylum and they put them into pods, which are these clear plexiglass, they're not plexiglass, clear plastic dividers. that they can put 100 people in each one. And these things are 130,000 square foot tents. And they have to process them within 72 hours. And this is what that means. They sign up every single one of them for welfare. Every single one of them. They sign up every single one of them for food stamps. They give every one of them a government phone that has an indefinite lifespan. They can call anywhere they want, and we, the taxpayers, pay for that too. And then they also sign them up for Medicaid. And then they sign them up for a free education. And then they indicate to them where they can get free legal advice. And then they ask them where they want to go. No vetting. They're not asking them any serious questions, just what they can give them and where they want to go. And then they divide them up based on where they want to go in the United States. And then they take them in CBP buses to the airport, the train station, or the bus terminal. And at those locations, there are non-governmental organizations. They're 100% federally funded by us. These organizations buy their tickets. When they're at these locations, they open up their phones. The tracking device that is in there can be taken out and the phones still work. They take them out and they throw them into the trash receptacles. So that if you take off the lid of it, you can see them stacked up all the way to the top with the tracking devices. Then they exchange phones. So there's no tracking of these people. And they're at our expense all over the United States. And it is not just the individuals. 2 minutes, thank you. It's not just the individuals who are here because they are desperately interested in an economic opportunity. The cartels determine who comes in. All right, how do we solve this? 3 things. Yes, we have to finish the border wall. Yes, we have to have this instead of DHS. If we fund DHS, DHS is corrupt to the core. We can't do it to solve this problem. We have to leapfrog past DHS and give block grants to the border states to enable them to hire the police and National Guard necessary to safeguard the border. And the third thing we need to do, we need to amend the asylum laws to make it illegal to put 1 foot into the United States and seek asylum. And if you do that, you will be permanently barred from being a United States citizen. Now, let me just close with this. Let me close with this. So we have known from the founding of the Republic that there was this threat to liberty that would always be there and that it would be our obligation to save the country. And Ronald Reagan, who brought me to Washington, put it this way. He said, freedom is never more than 1 generation away from extinction. We did not inherit it in the bloodstream. It must be protected and defended and passed on to each new generation so that in our sunset years we will not have to tell our children and our children's children what it was once like in America to be free. Freedom, liberty is what it's all about. That's what defines us as a unique nation in the world. We must do everything in our power to save this great bastion of liberty and not have it be annihilated, because nowhere else on earth is there a Constitution and a Declaration of Independence that protects human liberty like it does here, and we can't let them destroy it. Thank you so much.
Has Gwendolyn Hickman showed up yet? No? Okay, we'll go on with Kimberly, Nadine, Lowe. And you are also a lawyer?
Nope.
No, you're the farmer and the political policy analyst. Okay.
All right. Do we have to turn this back on?
Yes.
Input 3.
Input
Yeah,
3.
there you go, there you go.
Ooh, we're good. Look at that.
And turn your phone sideways so it's going.
Thank you. It'll just have to press the play button. Super. Okay, good. Look at that.
All right.
I'm going to try to awe you in 10 whole minutes. My name's Kimberly Lowe. I'm one of your U.S. Senate candidates. I am from Southwest Virginia. I am a 6th-generation Virginian. My family settled Southside and Southwest Virginia in the 1600s, came over to Jamestown, Williamsburg, spread out all over the place, and we're still here. I am the only candidate that was born and raised in Virginia. I'm the only candidate who's not north of Richmond. So, I don't know, that kind of matters to some people in Virginia. I think pictures are better. It's way more exciting, right? There's my kids. I'm a single mom. I didn't want to be a single mom. I totally believe in marriage and family, but it didn't work out for me. It's kind of sad. but my boys are 14 and 16. My daughter just turned 18. I was in Europe for 18 days meeting with members of the European Parliament. I homeschooled my kids, so I was so happy to take them. But I was freaking out as a parent because my daughter turned 18 and still had no idea what she wanted to do with her life. But thank goodness when we were in Europe at Parliament, she's like, oh, foreign policy is interesting. And she got offered an internship in Budapest, and she's going to be studying college there, so for international relations. And I was like, yes, thank you so much. She has a future. I got it really, I've spent my life serving my community. I've been a public school teacher in inner city schools. I taught grades 6 through 12. I was told that my expectations were too high and I needed to show more videos. It was horrifying. I saw them changing grades, failing their students, and I said, I can't change this as an educator. I'm gonna have to do something else with my life. I'm so sorry. I moved from Roanoke, where I'm originally from, to Brunswick County for a while. I didn't understand how other people lived in Virginia, and I started to problem solve there. And over a 7-county area, people started to come to me. They said, Kimberly, we heard that you can get things done. I have this problem. So for years, I solved every problem you can imagine. If somebody married somebody from the Philippines and they had immigration problems, I helped them. If the Farmers River was flooding, I could pull in anybody you can even imagine, EOD units, the Navy, Army Corps of Engineers, City Council, and I got it done. I solved the problem. Rails to trails, we've worked on economic issues. I've opened up domestic violence shelters. I brought in COVID testing to rural areas before we even knew what COVID was. I worked on everything that you can imagine. I particularly worked on family court reforms because courts are big business. It's a $55 billion business, and it's part of the Marxist plan to destroy the American family. It is disgusting. We are losing, for example, 1 child per minute to the government through Child Protective Services. Government is our largest trafficker of children. Simple policy fixes. If you want to stand with someone who can solve issues with the strength of our family, I would love it if you could stand with me. I'm trying to do this in 10 minutes. I come from a long military family and a bunch of women because all the men are dead. They died in every war. Richard Lowe actually died on a hospital in Richmond during the Civil War. His wife was pregnant with baby Richard Lowe. It's the only reason that the line of Lowes even survived in Virginia. We lost everyone. My grandmother was a Rosie the Riveteer. She drove from Roanoke to Dublin in order to sew ammunition bags. Sadly, she passed last year, and my mom, so Christmas was kind of weird. I've been on Team USA as the top 1% in the nation out of the top 10% for sports. Couldn't swim, bike, or run, and within 3 years I made the team. So when I set my mind to stuff, I go, I do it. I have 1 trillion different degrees. I'm book smart. I've been going to DC to lobby for all sorts of issues, whether it's Title IX or trying to strengthen our families. As a non-attorney, I submitted a brief to the United States Supreme Court last year to challenge the rights of parents over the state. Because even though the governor has an executive order to say that parents have rights, even though we have a law in Virginia saying that parents have rights, you still don't have rights. I have practiced at every single level of court too, fighting for Constitution. And I will tell you right now, Jonathan's not going to agree with me. These are not constitutional courts. These are maritime law courts. And we have to restore these courts to constitutional courts. If you walk in as a non-attorney, you have no rights. It is a lawyers, bar association, tyrannical system, and it's disgusting. And you need someone who's a non-attorney to fix it, because if you try to fix stuff as an attorney, they disappear in Virginia, or they have to go into hiding, or they steal your children. It's pretty bad. So, we are on the cliff, and I want to be real with you. I don't want to sugarcoat stuff. We're in trouble. I have so many solutions to solve problems. But right now, I don't know if you saw the news, but when you came in tonight, but it looks like war is breaking out everywhere right now. I was supposed to be meeting with the defense minister in South Korea next week, but I don't know if you've noticed what's going on with North Korea and South Korea. Right now, we have defense going into Yemen, and Iraq has specifically stated, if you do that, we're going to come after you. We have major problems right now. My higher intelligence sources, because I've been involved in politics for a long time, are telling me that I shouldn't be traveling further from my house than where I couldn't walk home within a day right now. I'm hearing that the bad guys are kind of cornered, and there's a potential that there could be some type of blowback, whether that's a communication blackout, cyber attack, that something could potentially happen. And we're in a really, really bad space right now. And I don't know if the good guys are in control right now. I think if we continue on the path that we're on, we're not going to make it to 2024 in a lot of ways. We're going to be at World War III. We haven't secured our elections. You know, how are we going to have a constitutional republic if we don't restore our elections? Our borders are being completely invaded, where we have more people who are not Americans having children than us. And we don't know who's come across. How many of them are terrorists? How much time do I have?
Oh, I'll tell you when you got 2 minutes left.
Okay, good, because I'm speaking as fast as I can, people. But my point is, I don't know if we're going to stay on this trajectory right now for even elections in 2024. Maybe that's not a good way to think about things, but I'm personally not in the best headspace right now for where we're at in America, because I think it's that bad. The World Health Organization will be voting soon, which would affect our sovereignty. Big deal, because that would affect our education system. They want to teach babies about sex and masturbating, even 4 and 5-year-olds. It is disgusting. This is their agenda. The 2030 global agenda, they are working heavily on. I'm a problem solver, and let me tell you, I was really hoping I'd have more time, because I want to talk about the things that I can do for you. But what I am doing is I'm reconstituting the transatlantic partnership between members of Congress in America and members of the European Parliament to work on issues with counterterrorism, issues with the border, and issues with the money that's funneling into our colleges to brainwash our youth, which is happening. And until we fix a lot of those issues, we're not going to move forward either. So I ended up spending time in Europe to work on that. What I thought is that they're just trying to control all the food. After being in Europe, it sounds like they want to compartmentalize food. Food security is going to be a really big deal. Sounds like they want our food to come out of South America. I got 2 minutes. So I've spent extensive time at the border. I did not go down there for a photo op. I have walked cartel trails with an AR. I didn't go down there just to play it safe. And if we stay on this trajectory, we have got to win this seat, because if we have control of the U.S. Senate, which is against Tim Kaine this year, then we would be able to get control of our foreign policy. Whatever happens in America is affecting the rest of the world. Right now, we have a weak country, weak America. You can see the fallout across the world. You've got major migration patterns. It's affecting everyone. It's a huge mess. And we didn't have this when Trump was in office, right? Because it was strong. These are some of my solutions, and we're just out of time. But
We will get to them on questions.
okay, good. So food security, have a lot of ways to solve that as well, particularly as a farmer. Something I wanted to talk about really quickly was BRICS. 1 minute. We are in the middle of de-dollarization. They are forming global economic alliances, gold-backed. I am getting from all sorts of sources that the American monetary system could potentially be changing in a positive way. So keep your eye on that in the upcoming months. We cannot continue on this path where we have $33 trillion in fake debt to the Federal Reserve, which is non-governmental, to pay the globalists. So I really think we're going to have very positive changes as far as that is concerned. I would love to have your support. I have real solutions. I'm on the ground. I get stuff done. A lot of people have not worked on everything like I have. You can ask me questions later. You can learn more about me at www.kimberlylowe.com, and please reach out to me anytime. Okay, I didn't even breathe. That was like, get it out.
All right, if both of you want to come up here to the front, and then we'll have a question and answer if you don't mind answering questions.
Sure.
And
My water there. Thank you.
you think you'd be able to answer a question in 2 minutes, or do you need 3? 2's fine? Okay. So the Tea Party is very concerned about the debt. We have a national debt. We're running a deficit every year on the budget, right? So it just adds to it. And we're now at 34 trillion. What is your solution to the budget?
Ladies
Right.
first, want to go first?
2 minutes.
Okay, great. All right, I'm probably out there. Some people say that this debt could potentially have already been paid. We can't continue on the way that we're doing. Everything's collapsing, the dollar's collapsing. Gasara was signed into Congress years ago. They're saying that we're gonna have a completely different monetary system. I honestly think it's positive and we're gonna be okay. I think we should keep our eyes on it. I think it's gonna happen suddenly. This debt is not real debt, it's a lot of bull. Federal Reserve is a non-government entity that's run by some unknown, cabal, globalist. I mean, all we're doing, it's a completely fake system. So all the years of the scare tactics on debt is completely false information. We have been printing money from air. So a lot of you just may not have gone as deep as me, and you may not agree. You may think I'm crazy, but I'm telling you, I think it's very positive what's changing. I think that we're probably going back to gold-backed, and that there's enough gold to do that. And then the dollar will be pegged to something, and we start fresh.
Okay.
So the national debt is a direct response, of course, to unlimited federal spending. And since 1994, we've had no budget process. They just passed continuing resolutions, and we have the most bloated, absolutely outrageous federal government in the history of the world. The climate change agenda is costing us trillions each year, and it is completely ridiculous. So what do we need to do to solve this problem? A number of things. First, we need to repeal the climate change legislation.
Yes.
So that prospectively we reduce by literally trillions the amount of money that is in outlays by the federal government. In addition, we need to downsize the federal government substantially. We need to close the Department of Education, close the Department of Commerce, close the Department of Energy, and also numerous federal agencies, which are not, closing these will not only reduce the cost of the government in association with it, but it will also eliminate the regulatory burdens that places on the economy, which will help the economy grow. But it's not enough to simply stop government spending. Because if we're going to arrest this national debt, if we're going to eliminate the $2 trillion deficit that will experience not only this year, but every year into the future and growing, what we're going to have to do is grow the economy, which is what we should want to do anyway. So we need to devolve federal functions to the states wherever possible, substantially reduce the government, and pass a bill I wrote for Ron Paul called the Congressional Responsibility and Accountability Act. What this does is prevent any proposed regulation of an agency from having any legal force or effect unless passed into law by Congress. And that will neuter the administrative state, substantially reducing the regulatory burden on the private sector. In addition, within 3 years of the passage of this bill that I wrote for Congressman Paul, every existing regulation would be sunsetted unless passed into law by Congress. Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution makes the Congress responsible for law. Very last thing.
Go ahead, 5 seconds.
5 seconds. We need to have a flat tax. We need to have a flat tax that starts at $100,000 of income, not before. And it needs to be 10%. And it needs to be an absolute maximum. And this will grow the economy. If we grow the economy, we will solve the problem. Thank you.
Okay, next question. What will you do with those placed in power, unelected, that defy the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and overreach of power?
Great, so currently the Constitution is not existing in our civil or criminal courts. What I would do, at least in Virginia, is I would have an individual in the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office who could oversee the lower courts, because they say that there's a process now where you can appeal, but they accept very few appeals. So you have people losing their homes, losing their children, losing absolutely everything, having fraud committed against them, all these crimes. The judges do what they want to do. There has to be oversight somewhere. There is no oversight. The JURC, which is the Judicial Review Committee, everybody's in bed together, everybody plays golf together. Anybody who stands out, they come after them. So having oversight where there's a constitutional violation or there is fraud, somewhere above them would be helpful. We have to end judicial immunity because judges are doing absolutely horrible things to people. And I'm not saying that all judges are bad, but I'm saying there's a lot in Virginia and across the nation that are not following the Constitution at all. You can look at Trump, for example, with gag orders. That's extremely unconstitutional, everything that's happened to him. It is a weaponized, corrupt system We could uphold the Constitution if we had somewhere to do that, and that's what our court system should be. So if we can change these from admiralty, maritime law courts to constitutional courts, we could fix this. This is something I've been working on for an extremely long period of time. That's me.
Okay.
So the delegate, this is a separation of powers and a delegation problem. The non-delegation doctrine is a thing we could talk about at length, but we won't. What's going on is presciently observed in this question because the unelected are making the laws. As we talked before, 3/4 of all federal laws being made by the unelected rather than those we elect, violating Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution. So this is a separation of powers power problem. How do you solve it? Well, first, you abolish administrative courts. Abolish them. So that the agencies have to go to the Article 3 courts of law to pursue their actions. This has huge consequences for our rights, because in the Article 3 courts, there is still a Fourth Amendment. There's still a guarantee against general warrants. There's still a right to a jury trial. There are all these things that are denied in the administrative courts will be given you. This will reduce the power of the agencies to act without being responsive to the people, but it will also cabin them with the Constitution. We also need a constitutional implementation requirement for every agency that they not act in violation of the separation of powers by doing a judicial or legislative or executive function, only a function to implement existing law. And this needs to be a litmus test, such that if you are a private defendant, you can raise this first in federal court. And the agency has to show that it's not violating the separation of powers before it can proceed. There are many things that can be done. Thank you.
All right. All right, what is your plan to stop the flow of illegal immigrants? What will we do about them?
We had good policies on the book before, but not only do we need to follow the former policies that we had, because like you said, I've spent time there too. It's really horrible. You have only a couple border agents over hundreds of miles because they're all processing paperwork. So they're coming in and they try to catch as many as they can, but they can't catch that many and they process them the whole night. What Trump was doing was working before. There's a long list of policy that he had that worked. We can go back to that. But we also have to address the mass immigrations and migrations of people that are happening around the world. And that comes back to sound foreign policy. If you have sound foreign policy, you have less movement of people. And that's why I personally would like to be on the Foreign Affairs Committee, because we can stop the invasions at every border. There's few countries that are paying attention to their border. One actually is Hungary. They have a closed border policy. They have a lot of safety, unlike here and many other countries. A lot of the countries in Europe are getting flooded with Ukrainians because of war. So you don't have war, you have someone who's a strong commander-in-chief. You don't have that type of flow.
So, three things. First of all, we have to build a border wall. Secondarily, we need to have a block grant system to the border, to the states, border states particularly, to allow them to hire the police and National Guard necessary to seal the border, and to invoke Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution, called the State Self-Defense Clause, which, believe it or not, allows a state, if invaded, to have war power and to actually arrest, detain, and eject those responsible. James Madison invoked that to kick out smugglers into Virginia. And then the third thing is what I mentioned before about changing the asylum law so that you can't step foot into the United States or you will be permanently barred from doing so. And if you seek asylum, it's through your country of origin, United States Embassy, or an adjacent country, but not here. And then the last thing is we need to get rid of those instances in which we are now liberally tolerating the cartels introducing into our country fentanyl and other drugs. It's a massive problem, and it may require military interdiction through special forces, but we need to be ready for it because it's killing over 130,000 Americans a year, and it's being used as a conduit by the Communist Chinese to basically destroy our infrastructure and our people. So those are among the things, there are many more, but that should suffice for the moment. Thank you.
What about the ones that are already here, should we give them amnesty or what?
Absolutely not.
You want
No,
to?
no. It's, our country's like overflowed and I'm.
So, they talk about how if you're born in America, right, under the 14th Amendment, Section 1, you're supposedly an American citizen. But they misread the 14th Amendment, Section 1, because it requires that you be subject to due process under Article 1, Section 1. What does that mean? If you are born here legally, you are an American citizen. But if an illegal alien is here and you're born, or if you're brought in illegally as a child, you're not an American citizen. You're not subject to, this is the language, subject to the due process of the laws. Because you've not subjected yourself to it, you've not become an American citizen, you haven't pledged your allegiance to the United States, you can still be having your allegiance to a foreign country. Therefore, they are not lawfully here if born here from an illegal alien. And everyone who is here illegally must be deported. We need the rule of law to be upheld, and we need to uphold it universally. Why? Because if you allow an underground economy, illegal individuals in this country, giving them full rights to citizenship, as we have as citizens, you dilute our citizenship, and you also take those who legally immigrated to the United States and became citizens, and you dilute their citizenship, and that's the point. Ultimately, the point of allowing this to happen is to destroy our sense of nationality, our sense of unity and commitment to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, so that they can destroy this country. So we can't allow it. Thank you.
Okay. What are your plans for the J6 political prisoners?
Okay. This is being recorded, right?
Yes, I hope so.
I was there.
Can't hear you.
Good.
Yeah, this is absolutely horrifying. This goes back to our courts being weaponized by our government. It's disgusting. I had someone contact me today, Prince William County, there's a person being arrested and all this fraud against them. It's disgusting what's happening in our country, and gosh, I'd like to say a lot with the cameras on. But no, they should have been released a long time ago. I can't believe they're still in prison. I'm very scared for people who were there because they're still coming after people continually. It's disgusting, and I would love to go into more detail when that's on. Thank you.
Okay.
Because it's real and it's happening now, you know?
So, the J6ers are political prisoners by and large. There are only a small number of those who actually destroyed property or assaulted police, for which prosecution is warranted. But the vast majority of J6ers simply engaged in criminal trespass, many of them without even knowing they were trespassing. So they don't even meet the criminal elements for criminal trespass, because they didn't know they were doing it. They were invited in by the FBI in many instances. And so this is not a situation where you have criminal trespass that is in any way violating anything. So what do they do with criminal trespassers in Washington, D.C.? The routine situation, and this happens every day, is to give a warning to the people. If they don't follow the warning, they can book them, but they let them out. They let them out except for these protesters. Why? Because these protesters are enemies of the state. Because these protesters dared challenge the authority of Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and the whole cabal of Democrats, because they had a political scruple in their heads that is unacceptable in America, and that is to challenge the integrity of an election that we know is corrupt. The solution is to let them go. This is what I'll do. I will introduce a bill that will grant immediate release and amnesty to all of those who are incarcerated, except for those for whom there is direct evidence of destruction of property and assault of police. Everybody else needs to be released. Thank you.
Okay, there's a follow-up question on the illegal aliens that are already in America. How do we deport that many people? They said there's like 10 million plus.
I was wondering that too. Do you have a good solution for that, Jonathan? Because that's going to cost a lot of money, right?
Well, in the ordinary course, we used to have a situation where we didn't have sanctuary cities and where state police and local police cooperated with the federal government. And when they made an arrest or in the course of discovering criminality, they would look at whether or not a person is a United States citizen. And if they weren't, then they would prepare them for deportation. And this is what we need to do. We have a horrible problem. This is going to take years and years to resolve this. It's not like we're going to be able to have a police state in America where every home is invaded to determine this. No. We abide by the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. We protect the rights of American citizens. And you have a presumption of innocence under the law. But in the course of an arrest, the state police need to cooperate with the federal police, with the federal authorities, and if somebody's here illegally, they need to be deported. And that process will take place. So, will it take a long while? Yeah. And is it necessary? Yes, it is. And it's necessary for a number of reasons, not least of which is that with this army of some 30 million illegal aliens in the United States operating in the underground economy, they're taking jobs away from American citizens because they're working at sub-minimum wage and they're taking away entry-level jobs. And so American citizens have a right to the constitutional protections that exist for them. Illegal aliens do not. They have not sworn allegiance to the Constitution of the United States, and they've not been vetted. So, sorry, I went a little bit long.
Did you want to follow up on that?
She has an idea.
I have an idea on
Thank
that.
you.
Is that, oh, is she allowed to talk?
No.
No. I'm so sorry. No, I don't have a follow-up.
You don't have a follow-up?
No. I just wanted to say this is so fun. I'm like out of a dating age because I've been single forever, and I feel like I can't go on a date because it's small talk. I'd be like, hey, did you see that Doomsday plane is up again? No. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll be quiet. Ask your question.
All right, what countries would you partner with for alliances?
Okay, so okay that I go first.
You bet. Go ahead.
So NATO and the United Nations are going to have to be reformed substantially. There's a lot of, okay, so this gets really complicated. I got to spend time meeting with members of European Parliament. I went to 18 countries in 8 days, went to a private invite-only event that was like Davos, but for conservatives to say, what are we going to do about this globalist agenda? There's a lot of argument over NATO and how those countries are being forced to pay a certain amount of money for defenses they don't necessarily agree in. Some of those countries that are part of the EU have formed alliances already, and they are the only ones holding the conservative, foot down. Poland and Hungary being two of those together. I don't think we can necessarily judge right now who the good guys and the bad guys are because our mainstream media has been completely corrupted. And so I think that's a really, really long, in-depth question that can't be answered in 2 minutes.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Thank you.
So the United States, by and large, needs to remove itself from almost every international organization. And the reason is that those international organizations are largely under the control of the Communist Chinese. So the World Health Organization wants to have a global World Health Organization controlled response to every medical emergency. And this means a loss of our sovereignty, a loss of physicians' independent judgment, and a total takeover of our choices and our information flows related to disease. That's just one example. But the question of alliances is this. Remember that it was George Washington who warned us against entangling alliances. And we need to be very careful not to allow an agreement, a treaty, to deprive us of our sovereignty and of our constitutional protections, which is frequently what this administration does, even without a treaty. So the Paris Climate Accord, for example, is ruinous to our own economy, greatly beneficial to the third world, but just the devil of a time for us. And we should be out of that. We should be out of the World Health Organization. And in fact, we really should be out of the United Nations, to tell you the truth. But in the world, there is a country that today is absolutely being ravaged by one of the most savage enemies of us and civilization, and that is Israel. And in the case of Israel, what we need to do is get out of the way of Israel in dealing with Hamas and Hezbollah and Islamic Jihad, and let them do the business of ending those institutions of absolute perdition and ruination, because it's in our own best interest to see that happen. All right, thanks.
Okay.
You're right there.
What is your stance on recreational cannabis?
we shouldn't be regulating plants. But at the same time, the marijuana now is not grandma's marijuana or the marijuana when I was a kid. It's extremely potent and it's changed a lot. So it's not like you can smoke a joint and go drive your car because it's a completely different potency. But at the same time, I think the government's over-regulating and you shouldn't regulate a plant. But I don't want to go down the street. Like, I've lived in the Netherlands. It used to be really bad years ago where, I mean, you couldn't go anywhere, man. The whole place was just filled up with weed. It's changed a lot where it's not like that. I was there with my kids, so I was kind of glad because I don't need my kids high, you know. Dealing with 3 teenagers, no thank you. But I'm not a big fan of regulation, period.
So, in all of these sorts of questions, you must really recur to what it means to have liberty in America, right? What does that mean? And so Thomas Jefferson gave us the great definition of what he called rightful liberty. He said, rightful liberty is unobstructed action according to will, within limits drawn around us by the equal rights of others. He said, I did not say within the limits of the law, because the law is often but the tyrant's will, and always so when it violates the rights of an individual. So, if you are using marijuana and you're doing it in a manner that does not cause offense to your neighbor, or does not cause a car accident, or does not cause a ship to be aground, or does not cause you to abuse children, or does not cause you to neglect the care of children, that's your business. But if you do use any drug that causes you, in the course of doing some function in the public, to cause injury, then your use of that drug ought not be a defense. And we ought to be in a position of holding you accountable for your choices. So, rightful liberty, Jefferson's gift to us, is what we need to think about when we hear these issues, and be prudent in how we use the force of law, which is oftentimes, as he said, but the tyrant's will.
Okay. What do we do about farmland that's being bought up by foreign countries?
Yeah, this has already been addressed in Virginia where we're not going to allow it to happen. What's scary though is they are buying up land in sneaky ways and ways that you can't see who's purchasing it. It's happening all over America, so you have no idea what they're going to do to use that land. We know Bill Gates has bought up massive amounts of farmland, and again, it comes down to control, and that goes back to, I mean, actually, look at the farmer, what state was he in, where they've confiscated, you know, all of his food right now. This is happening in Virginia too with the Amish. It's complete government control. Whoever controls the food is going to control the people. So it's more than farmland, it's bigger than that. Some of it you can't even stop at a policy level because you can't tell who's buying that property. But it has to be something that you do for all of America.
So, one of the first things that we have to ask ourselves is, are Chinese communists directly or indirectly in control of an entity that is buying farmland?
Yes.
If it's just Chinese people, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily controlled by the CCP. The problem is when it's controlled by the CCP, and most of these land deals are, through entities that are controlled by the CCP. If it's a Chinese company, it's automatically controlled by the CCP. Every company in China is. So we have a failure of intelligence, and we have a failure of the law. The law needs to prohibit CCP-owned, operated, or controlled entities from owning any farmland in the United States. And we need to ensure that before any company or a subsidiary of it, or even an agent of it, is allowed into this state, into our country, where it has origination back to China, that we have investigated it, determined whether or not there are links back to China, and if there are links back to the CCP, prohibit their entry into the United States, force them to divest the property, and compel them to be kept out of this country because the CCP is an active enemy of the United States. Biden is wrong. It's not a strategic competitor. It is an enemy of the United States that seeks our total destruction. And until we wake up to that reality and kick them out of here if they're engaged as agents, we are going to be constantly subjected to numerous threats to our liberty because of the CCP's emphasis on destroying us.
Okay. This question's kind of long. Do you support the SBCTA, Small Business and Corporate Transparency Act? guess it requires small business to file a beneficial ownership information report, BOI, pass. The file is.
I'm already trying, okay?
Yeah. It's filed with Homeland Security. It will be a crime not to file a BOI. I don't know what that is.
Starting this year, yeah. That was my question.
Okay, do you know anything
So we
about
all
that?
need to learn about BOIs. Do you know about BOIs?
A little bit.
There you go.
Anyway, this is another example of the way in which the Biden administration, through regulation, is basically depriving us of choice. And there are numerous things like this. Recently, NACs, right? Natural Asset Corporations, it's a new entity that will take control over our private property, the beneficial uses of it, allegedly to preserve the environment. This sort of thing directs small business. You participate, if you take money as a small business entity from the SBA, you end up having so many strings attached to what you do and so much influence over the direction of your company. Word to the wise, if you have a small business, don't take an SBA loan. But long term, we need to eliminate these entities and get back to a vibrant, free market economy where interest rates go down again. You can actually afford to have capital available.
Okay.
I want to take a picture of that card too so I can learn more.
Okay. Kenny had a follow-up question on something you asked, so.
You spoke about going to the EU and talking to the EU Parliament.